This happened to me back in the 1980s when I was working as a prison security guard. Prisons back then, they weren't really anything like they are now. You don't have all of your comforts and your luxuries and your standards. Back then, prison was actually prison, and not just a damn vacation where everyone gets pampered and treated with respect. The prisons were a lot more cramped and a lot shittier too. You could actually punish an inmate for talking back. If you do that in the modern day, they will send you packing with no pay. I was working in a really run-down prison that was in a rural area of Kentucky. There were a few prisons in the area, and yet it still was not enough. The place was overrun, and we were having to squeeze 4 inmates into one cell at certain times, and this prison was really not built for that shit, especially with how little staff that we had. It did not bother me so much, but it meant that the prisoners were always rowdy, always raring for a fight, and to make it seem like they were the big dogs. The prison was not really all that much to look at. It was just rows and rows of cells with a tiny cafeteria and not really all that much else. Even the yard was not all that big, so most inmates spent rec time either exercising, running, or just talking amongst themselves, which meant that lots of fights broke out, since a lot of people would get really bored. The fights, they were like a pandemic back then. They were doing this tough on crime shit, not caring about us schmucks who had to look after them. I tell ya, we had more people in that prison for taking drugs than we had real criminals. I mean, hey, we could not even get any dealers or kingpins. It was always some bozo who was too dumb not to do it outside their house, or who got busted because they were yapping to everyone around them. My job was mostly doing the rounds at night and checking on the prisoners. My exact duties changed from day to day, which was a little bit annoying actually. Sometimes I would be out in the yard, sometimes I would be watching over the cafeteria. Like I said, we barely had enough staff to even run the place, so I just had to suck it up. Anyway, so one night, we get a van rolling in. I was stationed outside at the time and I was like, what the hell? This was practically unheard of, but this van rolled in with 2 suits driving, and they had a new inmate in the back. In all of my years, I'd never seen a new inmate arrive at nighttime, especially without prior warning like that. Usually we'd at least get a heads up. They were the real deal. IDs checked out and everything, and I had to call down my superior, because I didn't know what to do. This was unprecedented. They took my superior off to the side and talked to him for a little while until he eventually looked back at me and called me over. There was another guy with me too. The suits explained that he was just being detained here temporarily, that he was bound for another correctional facility, more specialized for his needs, but that there was a delay or something. They told us specifically to free up a cell and toss him in there alone. They went to great lengths to emphasize that he should be alone and that no one else should be in the cell with him. They then proceed to say that he should be monitored at all times and that they would be in the nearby area making additional preparations. We were also told specifically that he should not be granted rec time and be kept in the cell at all times. I asked if we should just shove a tray of fruit through the bars for the guy, and they told me it would not be necessary. They straight up told us he won't be hungry, which seemed exceptionally weird, not even just in retrospect. Even just hearing it in the moment, it really weirded me out. After the spiel from the suits, they brought the man out of the van, and they had to carry him. He looked like he was out cold. His eyes were closed at the very least, and he refused to use his legs to walk. He had one of those bite mask things on. I'm not even shitting you. It was like some Hannibal Lecter type shit, and I had never seen that before at this prison. He was just wearing a standard jumpsuit of the time, but he had those manacle things around both his arms and his ankles. I could not really make out much about him, other than that he was balding, and that he had a weird mark on his neck. I figured it was a birthmark of some kind. I remember it pretty clearly because of the weird shape. If you squinted, you could kinda see a boot, but more messed up. A little bit like Italy looks on the map. The front part was pretty dark compared to his pale skin, but the tail end of it looked almost bluish, like it was a bruise or something. The suits did not even bother to bring him inside. They just handed him off to us. They said not to remove any of the chains and to house him immediately. Well, my boss did not really care for suits like that. He thought that they were all uppity and that they think that they're better than everyone else. He told me that we did not have room to house this guy separately, that this guy would have to share a cell just like everyone else, and if they didn't like it, he said that they could sit and swivel. So, in the middle of the night, I have to dump this guy into his bunk because he is still out cold. No introductions, no nothing. The two guys already in this cell wanted to start a fight with me over it. They were the only cell in the entire block to not already have 3 people inside, and they were kicking up a fuss about how it was absolute bullshit. They were giving me this tough guy shtick, but when they realized they couldn't really do anything, they started saying they were going to beat the new guy, black and blue, give him a warm welcome, make sure he begs for a transfer. I mean shit. Usually I wouldn't care, but I gave him a stern warning just to say I told him so, that the Bureau boys would not be happy if they got caught, that their sentence could end up doubled or tripled just for interfering. It stopped them from chirping, well, at least for a couple of hours. I think it was around 9 p.m. when I dumped him in there, so it was just about to be lights out. One of them was being a jackass and refused to move to the top bunk, so I said screw it. I just had another guard help me lift him up top. He just laid there flat on his back. He did not move a muscle. Heck, he could have stopped breathing for all I knew. So I went away. I took a break for a quick puff of my cigarette. I got a bite to eat, and then I started on my rounds. All in all, I think a few hours went by. I am on the opposite side of the prison, making sure that these guys are actually asleep and that they do not have any contraband. Next thing I know, I'm hearing screams echoing throughout the place, some really, really loud ones too. It sounds like someone is being slowly tortured. I started sprinting the second I heard the sounds. My heart dropped as I was running because I realized where they were coming from. It was near where the new inmate was. I had other prisoners waking up and asking what was going on as I was running. I had to just tell them to shut up and get back in bed. I was on the complete opposite side of the prison, and I was still the first bozo to reach the cell, which kind of figures. But what I saw, man, I was not expecting it at all. I thought maybe there was a little bit of a tussle or something, just a little roughhousing with the new guy, it's pretty common stuff. But no, not at all. One guy is on the floor. He stopped screaming by now. His eyes are just lifeless. He's giving this dead-eyed stare right up to the ceiling. He isn't even struggling. The new inmate, he is on top of this guy. He is tearing chunks out of this guy with his teeth. I mean, literally. I have no idea how he managed to get out of the mask. Part of it was still attached to his face somehow, while other bits of the mask were ripped up and scattered on the floor. The prisoner on the floor, he had holes in his neck near his cheek. He was literally just dripping blood into a massive pool on the floor. I am fumbling with the keys, shouting for anyone nearby to me to come and help me urgently. Meanwhile, the third prisoner is holding the new inmate's neck from behind, trying to choke him. He looks like he's crying. This is a grown man, a really hardened guy, and he's just fucking sobbing. He is punching him repeatedly in the back with his free hand too. Just again and again in the back, but it's doing nothing. The guy he's holding, he's not even reacting. He is trying to force him backwards, but he just does not budge an inch, until wham, new inmate sinks his teeth into the wrist of the guy. I finally get the door open, and meanwhile, this guy is on top of the third prisoner. The new inmate is still being hampered by the chains, but he is using his hands to make this grabbing motion, and trying to do, I don't even know what to the guy. The guy on the bottom cannot move. I am in there now, trying to pull the new inmate away, but he is strong, really, really strong. He's got this insane heat coming off of him, coming off of his body. I could feel it the second that I touched him, but not just that. It felt almost like I was in a sauna, just being that close to him. I noticed that the back of his neck is all messed up. He has got cuts and bruises that look like they had healed and scarred over before being ripped open again. On one spot of them, it looked tinged blue slightly, kind of, and you could see one of the veins popping out a little bit. I pulled out my baton by this point and was pounding him on the back of the neck. It made him cry out a little and stumble, but it did not stop him straight away. Guards on the inside, they would not let you carry a gun. You would only get defensive weapons to prevent an inmate from snatching it and killing all of you. So, the new inmate has his hands clasped around the third inmate's ear, and he is just tugging. Every time he tugs, the guy on the floor is screaming his heart out. I have never seen such a tough guy look so deathly scared. Backup has finally arrived. We are a couple of seconds away from swarming in and smothering this guy so that he cannot do anything else. But it's too late. In just one swift motion, he just rips off this guy's ears. I'd never seen anything like it in my entire life. The sound that it made, I can't even begin to describe it properly. That squelching sound, combined with the ripping of bone and cartilage. Man, sometimes even to this day, I could not even finish eating my meal because I remember that sound and it makes me just wanna throw up. This crazy bastard, he takes them and he just puts them in his mouth. He is literally like chomping down on these ears as we all start grabbing him and putting him up against the wall. We have got more and more people swarming in. Basically every single spare man is here now, and this fucker is up against the wall. He is moving his head side to side and just making the most horrible sounds as his face is pressed up against the wall. The sick fuck is still chewing. I can hear it. I can hear him biting down. At one point, he spits something out against the wall, and it makes such a thick, horrible noise. It is what's left of the ear, along with a lot of thick and clotted blood and mucus. Maybe something else too. I couldn't really tell. Medical staff are here by this point. They are tending to the guy on the ground immediately, who I think passed out from the trauma. He did not die that day, somehow. He was a lucky, lucky boy. The whole place is on high alert. We had to put the new inmate under. The aftermath of that night was really not pretty. We had to call in those suits and, man, they were not happy, to say the least. My superior and the rest of us got a lot more than an earful. They were threatening all of us with sanctions and maybe even jail time for such a colossal fuck-up. The whole block of that prison had to be sealed off for more than a day. We had to move out each and every prisoner and shove them into other blocks. 24 hours of cells with 5 or 6 prisoners inside of them. They could not even breathe, let alone move. There were not even enough beds for them to sleep in. At one point, we just had to let a ton of them out into the yard and let them fuck around there all night because there was really not much that we could do. It's not like they were gonna sleep anyway, and hey, we were already up shit creek. That new inmate, well, he did have his own cell now. I think they had a word with that third inmate. Well, I guess not, since he did not have any damn ears anymore, but I imagine they communicated with him somehow. They took away the body, cleaned it up. None of the inmates were to know. That was the rule, that it had to be covered up entirely. Rumors spread, and they did so like wildfire. We had to crack down on it hard. That's what we were ordered to do. Anyone mentioning the event or spreading rumors about what actually happened, we had to teach a lesson. We had to come up with cover stories and make it clear that it was not to be talked about. That went about as well as you would expect, but we did what we could. Eventually, I saw the suits leave with 2 body bags. I have no idea what that was about. The new inmate was not dead, last I saw. Maybe it was the only way they could get him around without him going crazy. I never found out what really went on that day. That was the first and last time I ever heard about it. Nothing else I ever experienced as a prison guard ever even came close to that event. I spent close to 2 decades working for the Department of National Resources. 10 of those years were with wildlife enforcement, and let me tell you, it's not an easy gig. The hours are brutal, the land is massive, and you have to cover all of it. And out there, miles from pavement, you see some extremes of what people are capable of, both good and bad, and no two encounters are ever the same. Before that, I logged timber in the same region, but those early years gave me an eye for things. I learned how to read tire tracks, how to recognize a camp someone didn't want found, how to spot the difference between a legal hunter and one banking on not getting checked. I learned how to read people, their body language, what they were like, etc. Most of the time, I really liked the job. It just gave me something to do. It was tiring, but the days they pass by quite quickly once you get used to it. My territory was a span of protected wilderness that straddled the state line. It was old too, really old. Some of my coworkers liked the game tags, others stuck to traffic violations or ATV enforcement, but I like to roam around and do different jobs. I've experienced a lot of weird stuff and weird people, but mostly I'm able to just laugh it off. But there was one afternoon that freaked me out more than most. It was late spring a couple years back. The snow melt was over and everything was coming back to life. The woods looked like something out of a diorama. It was just all lush and quiet, and it was perfect for me. I'd been assigned to check on several remote fishing access points, ones that were buried miles deep off of narrow service roads. Most of it was just routine. I would check permits, radio in coordinates, note any violations, etc., etc. I was just carrying my standard gear. I have to reiterate that out here, if something goes wrong, help is not coming, at least not soon enough, so you have to be smart, you have to be careful, you have to be able to handle your problems, and at the very least, delay. There was one lake I always hated checking. Not because of the water or the wildlife, but because of the terrain itself. The place was hidden in a hollow of old volcanic rock, wrapped in thorn brush and loose shale. Getting there meant dealing with snakes, bad footing, and dense overgrowth. It took half an hour of crawling just to get eyes on the shoreline. It was annoying and frustrating. It took me longer than all of the other lakes combined. Worse still, the place always gave me that feeling that you were being watched. Most people, when you say that, they think it's just hogwash, but I felt it. And obviously, I can't just skip on a site because it's my job and I want to keep it, so you just get on with it. I reached the trailhead around noon. I ate a sandwich on the way when I took a couple minutes break. I made sure to check my firearm, adjust my vest, and I started the hike in. The trail wasn't really much of a trail. It was more a path of footprints and boot prints worn into the dirt over the long years, and deer hooves too. I passed a creek halfway up. There were no signs of animal kills or fresh tracks out of the place. I checked the usual corners where people stashed trash or camped off grid, but there was nothing. So I logged the coordinates, gave dispatch a quick update, and kept on moving. I reached the lake itself around 2 in the afternoon. It was all still. Nothing was going on in the area. It was super quiet, no animal sounds at all. I started my perimeter loop, scanning for signs of any squatters or anything of the like. About halfway around, I spotted a glint of something metallic that was off color. Through the tangle of brush, I saw 2 figures crouched low on the far side. They didn't look to be moving or talking. They looked like they were just sitting there and waiting for something. That's never a good sign. I lifted up a hand and gave them a casual wave. It was obvious they could see me. There was no hiding from them. I tried to be as non-threatening as possible and made sure to try and hide my firearm. One of them raised his arm in return. It was lazy. It looked almost sarcastic, but the other one did not bother at all. I circled the lake slowly and carefully. The rocks were loose and I had slipped on here a couple of times. As I got closer, the smell hit me. It was beer and sweat, and the sour funk of too many days without a shower. I saw their cooler, their mess of empty cans, and then I saw them. Two men who were maybe in their 20s. One of them had a scraggly beard and mirrored sunglasses. He was sunburnt. The other was wiry and shirtless. He had tattoos all over his body, like he just got out of prison. They were all stick and pokes. They both looked cooked, drunk, high, or both at the same time. And leaning casually against the cooler between them was a small rifle, a .22 that was beat up, bolt action. And that instantly put me on edge. I knew I had to be careful now. I greeted them. I said afternoon, and I asked if either of them had a fishing license. The guy with the beard looked up and just started laughing, and he told me to get lost. The tattooed one spat on the ground into the bush and started grinning at me. He was like, "You serious? Ain't nobody checking way out here." I tried to keep the situation calm and not escalate. I was just like, "It's all good. If you've got licenses, I will leave, and if not, I will just be on my way too. I'll give you a warning for now." The beard guy stood up slow. It looked like he was trying to be intimidating and tower over me, and he was like, "We've been fishing here since we were kids, man. You don't get to come up here with your clipboard and tell us jack shit." The tattoo guy stood next to him, cracking his neck, looking like he was ready to start fighting, and he was like, "The water don't belong to the feds. This is our land." I shifted back a single step. You don't want to show fear in this situation, but also, you don't want to come across as if you were squaring up and looking for a fight. I just tried to speak clearly and firm, but not threatening. I was like, "This doesn't need to be a thing. If you just tell me yes or no, that's it, I can leave." But then I made the mistake of telling them that if they laid their hands on me, I'm a federal officer, so they will be waking up in county jail. I probably should have just left it at the first part, but in retrospect, I think it didn't really matter. These guys were itching for a fight, no matter what I did, and they took this as a challenge. They glanced at each other, and the bearded guy lunged for me and shoved me. I stumbled over a rock, caught my balance, and told them that's enough. I said that we shouldn't do this. The tattoo guy grabbed a fistful of my shirt and yanked me hard. I lost my footing, and the next second I was falling onto the floor, onto my ass, into the lake. My gear hit the water with a splash. The holstered cig on my hip jerked me down immediately. I came up sputtering and coughing, and my eyes were stinging from the cold lake. There was something in that fucking water. I'm surprised I didn't get some kind of eye-eating infection. I was expecting to get shot in the head, but they were just laughing at me. I dragged myself out and said, "Screw it, whatever, I'm walking away. You had your fun. I'm going." But the tattoo guy, he snatched up the rifle and swung it lazily in my direction. He wasn't aiming, he was just gesturing with it. It's clear he was still fucked up. And then he called me some insults, and then, before I could even react or realize, he pulled the trigger. Crack. The bullet snapped and slapped the water near my boots, way too close. I dove into the brush. I was not giving them a chance. Another one snapped off, but it landed really far away. This guy clearly could not aim properly in his state. He was really messed up. Once I was out of their line of sight, I just bolted, full sprint. My boots were soaked and heavy, but I had to get out of there. There was no point trying to turn and reason with them or even shooting back while they were in that state. They were too unpredictable. I don't like unpredictable. I made it to a ridge high enough so that my radio caught a signal, and I radioed the base saying that I had been assaulted by two intoxicated males who had a gun, and I requested backup. There was a pause, and then they told me that someone would be on the way. I dropped next to a tree, drew my sidearm, and just waited. I had to be on alert. That hour that I waited there, it felt like forever. When help finally arrived, they came in full force, 2 trucks, 4 rangers, and a sheriff's deputy named Carson. I had worked with him once before during a poaching sting. He was a good guy. I was glad to have him at my back. They eventually found me and I was still dripping. I gave them the rundown, showed them where it happened, then we started back up the trail. They asked me if I thought the rifle was still loaded. I told them they fired at least a dozen rounds, but there might be more. We reached the ridge and fanned out. I smelled the smoke before I saw them. Charcoal, cheap beer, piss, same cooler, same wrecked mess, same two jackasses lounging like nothing had ever happened. Guy with the beard was now shirtless, just tanning himself. He was just laying out on a rock. The other guy was standing in the water. We moved fast, with guns out. We told them to get down, to get on your stomach, hands where I can see them. The guy with the tattoo just ran as fast as he could. The guy with the beard just froze. He couldn't exactly get up off the rock. I hit the runner. I put a shoulder into his back and drove him into the dirt. He thrashed and cursed at me and was trying to throw elbows at me, but I pinned him by the neck until backup got his wrists in zip ties. He wasn't laughing anymore. Beard guy just laid there, dumb and blinking, until someone hauled him down too. The rifle was still there. They still had 5 rounds in the tube. We cuffed them both and walked them down the trail. The whole way they just ran their mouths, calling us fascist government thugs trying to steal the people's land. They sobered up pretty quickly in that cell, and they didn't look so tough. Couple days later, turns out they both have active warrants, assault and weapons charges, even charges for domestic violence. One had a fake ID from Nevada and was on the run. The other had plates tied to some girl in Flagstaff. Their entire story was bunk. They were just trying to hide out here. Thankfully, the charges stuck and they both did some serious time. I'm just thankful that that day they were too fucked up to shoot me properly, because if they weren't drunk and high, who knows how that would have gone down. I could have easily ended up dead. This is not my story, but actually my late father-in-law's. My father-in-law was growing up in a rural area of Japan. He would constantly explore around the nearby woods. In July one day, it was getting pretty late. It was around 7 or 8 o'clock when he was heading home, and he noticed someone in the woods with him. It was this girl who was around his age at the time. She was dressed normally but did not say anything other than screaming to get help. My father-in-law runs back into town and tells the story about the girl screaming for help to his parents. They tell some nearby neighbors who say they will go and look into it. In the meantime, apparently, the parents are more concerned about seeing the girl than someone actually being in trouble. For about 3 weeks afterwards, my father-in-law would have a reoccurring nightmare about the girl where she is just screaming and instead of having eyes, she has these empty black pits. About a week after the nightmare stopped being recurring, my father-in-law is in the house one day. He is in the kitchen making snacks when he unmistakably sees the same girl inside his house. He makes a run for it and locks the door. He tells a neighbor, and they search every corner of the house, but there is no sign of anyone else. One night, this girl would appear inside his bedroom. Once again, she only had empty pits for eyes, but she disappeared just as soon as she had appeared. After a while of sightings, he went to a Shinto priest in the town to explain what had been going on for quite some time. The priest tells him something along the lines of an evil spirit had followed him and is trying to ruin him. The priest performs a ceremony to keep the spirit at bay. Not banish it, but so it can't directly harm him. At around age 19, my father-in-law moves to an apartment in Kyoto, and the sightings have been sparse, but one night, he was watching TV. He heard a knock on his apartment door. He opens it up and no one is there. He looks down the hall and sees the little girl again. About 2 years after that, he only has very sparse sightings. Then he immigrates to America with his wife. The timeline of this would have been around 1987-ish, I think. Father-in-law and wife had come to America, living in California at the time. My father-in-law is working on cleaning up the house's garage when he hears the door to the garage open up. He turns around. He sees the empty-eyed girl. She is looking visibly angry. Then she disappears. After a few minutes, he begins to hear loud slamming on the garage door. My father-in-law describes it as if someone had repeatedly thrown themselves at the garage door at full force. He lifts the door to see that there is no one there. 2 years later, his son will be born, And on the morning after his birth, he saw the empty-eyed girl throughout the hospital. He stands his ground. No words exchanged, but he apparently stared down the entity. He said he could feel the absolute anger that this thing gave off. Yes, he would refer to the empty-eyed girl as a thing. About 4 years after that, his daughter will be born. He would see the empty-eyed girl once again. From then on, sightings of the entity would happen in cycles where it would appear, activity would happen, but after that it would stop for weeks, months, and on one occasion for years. Fast forward some years, my father-in-law is with me. He is hanging out at mine and my fiance's place. He says he sees the empty-eyed girl once again, right outside our window. He tells me the story of the girl and sightings of her. He tells me he is sure that he will have to face it when he finally passes away. He apparently had seen her again on the wedding day in 2016. My father-in-law finally passed away last June of a brain aneurysm immediately after winning a poker game with some coworkers. 2 weeks prior to his death, he admitted to me that he knew he did not have much time left and that it could possibly be waiting for him.